The map of the world is a lot stranger than you think it is, especially this map. You've probably seen it a lot in classrooms or office buildings, but this map is extremely, very badly wrong. Everything is bigger in Texas, but what is Texas itself bigger than? Moving the borders over to Europe, the answer may surprise you. Texas is much bigger than Spain and Portugal put together, and is also even bigger than France. But Texas is only the second biggest US state behind Alaska, which seems absolutely gargantuan at the top of our map. But while Alaska is large, it isn't that large. Taken down to the US mainland, it compares like this, and taken to Europe, it looks like this. And while we're here in Europe, let's take the time to understand how much bigger Europe seems than what it actually should be. Let's start by taking France and moving it down to Africa to get our first glimpse at this. The United Kingdom seems pretty large as well, but let's take India and move it over to see just how small it really is. The United Kingdom is actually smaller than quite a lot of places in the world that you might not expect. Places like Japan, the Philippines, Sumatra, Madagascar, and New Zealand. Next door to New Zealand is Australia, and the UK looks so small just off the east coast in comparison. And Australia, in fact, is much bigger than most people believe it to be. It can be placed to cover almost the entire continental US. Interestingly, the combination of the following countries will not cover that same area: Portugal, the Netherlands, Estonia, Albania, Hungary, Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Austria, Croatia, Latvia, the Czech Republic, Serbia, Switzerland, Slovakia, Lithuania, Denmark, Ireland, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, the United Kingdom, Italy, Germany, France, Spain, and Norway. And that's not even factoring in big but not too big Alaska to the north. Between Alaska and the United States is Canada, which also seems huge up here. And while Canada is a very large country, it's actually roughly the same size as China, but still looks like a colossus when placed in Europe, where it stretches from east to west to Portugal to Iran and up north into the Barents Sea just above of Russia. Slightly off topic, Japan is another bigger place than most people believe it to be. If Japan were placed off the US East Coast, it would look like this in comparison. But much, much bigger than Japan, and also not often thought about, is Brazil, which is an absolutely massive country. It doesn't really look like it on our map, but when we move it to Australia, we can actually discover that Brazil is much bigger, which makes Brazil larger than one of the world's 7 continents. Brazil is also almost larger than the United States, spans almost all of Europe, but fits rather snugly into Africa. We are about to discover that Africa is a colossal continent that we don't often realize. It can almost fit the entire contiguous United States into just the Sahara Desert, and the continent can also squeeze in China, Western Europe, India, Argentina, Scandinavia, and the UK, and still have some room left over. Russia is another place that looks pretty big at the top of the map, but dropped down next to Africa, she also seems much smaller than what our map was telling us beforehand. While we're still here in Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo used to be a colony of Belgium, but Belgium in comparison looks like this. Finally, we need to look at a few other places on the map to the north and the south. Let's start with Sweden, which looks big, but comparing it to Madagascar again, we see that it actually isn't. Iceland also seems like a large island, but it's actually roughly the same size as Tasmania, just south of Australia. And finally, we have the white elephant in the room of Greenland, which towers like a behemoth at the top of the map. Greenland masquerades as being a continent in her own right, looking bigger than Australia, South America, and being comparable to North America. But in reality, Greenland is much, much smaller compared to Australia, South America, and North America. Antarctica, much bigger than Australia. It can stretch all the way from Kiev to Uganda, and incredibly, can be placed between the southernmost tip of Texas in the United States and stretch all the way into the northernmost islands of Canada. There are many more examples like this, but you've probably understood the point by now. The world is both a bigger place and a smaller place than you previously thought it to be.
Hello and welcome to Tricks of the S-Trade channel. Today is the 13th of May 2018. On today's feature, we're taking a look at someone who's very been popular in much of the, let's say, the movie world. And we've watched a lot of movies concerning this particular person, and the person happens to be Richard Gere. So judging by the title of the video today, it's called Pretty Woman and Understanding White Supremacy and Terrorism. We're going to be talking about those two things, so that we can have a perfect view of a world to understand why things are the way they are. And the first thing also that we're going to talk about, like, I mean, if you started watching the video from the beginning, you would see that we played a short clip trying to show you the actual size of the continents, so that you could understand what we say on this particular video, because understanding the size of the continents, especially the continent of Africa, which happens to be the largest continent in the world and which all other continents can fit into, then you're going to have a perfect understanding of white supremacy and terrorism as a whole. So we're going to be taking a good look at those two things and laying a basic foundation, so when we start talking about it, you can understand better. So this video will give you a clear understanding of your world and why terrorism exists in the world and white supremacy. We go into a lot of explanation also in our book. We advise that you should get that book, please. It's very, very important, because we know that our channel is going to be shut down very, very soon, because the Vatican is hard at work. They landed a strike on account again after the Southern Q video that they landed a strike, which was removed. They landed another strike on account for a video on the real gender, not transgender or transsexual series, part number 4. Now, for somebody who's untrained in the art of deception and terrorism, YouTube said that let's just show you what YouTube said on that particular strike. They say, "Hi, Tricks of the Straight. As you may know, our community guidelines describe which content we allow and don't allow on YouTube. Your gender, real gender, not transgender or transsexual 4 was flagged for review. Upon review, we've determined that it violates our guidelines. We've removed it from YouTube and assigned a community guidelines strike or temporary penalty to your account." So what they're saying that this video, the real transgender, not transsexual, real gender, not transgender or transsexual 4 violates the guideline. Now, the video content restriction. So they're trying to talk about what the video itself makes, because like we've always told you, every time YouTube is owned by the Vatican. The Vatican uses YouTube to censor speech. So that's what it's doing. So you have to understand that when the Vatican creates a lot of avenues to control information. The whole reason why we are online is so that information can be controlled, censored at the drop of a hat. That's the whole reason why we are online. Because when we have stuff in books, like we've always had through history, you cannot censor a book. You cannot stop somebody from writing a book. There's always going to be written material, and written material is one of the best ways to get information. Now, the whole idea of having the internet is so that everything digital can be changed. The whole idea of having technologies on your phones, on your TV screens, on your computers, is because all of this can be changed. For example, the hard drives that you carry have an expiry date. After that, all the information you have there, it's going to go bankrupt. So if you thought you had an information on your hard drive, in the next couple of years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line, it's going to get corrupted. But you cannot corrupt a book. So the Vatican wants us to always go online, go digital. They encourage you to do so, and they do it with so many other tactics, and meandering to make you get online as the best way to preserve your information. It's not the best way to preserve your information. All that is done so that they can control the information that you have. So getting back to the strike that they're landing account, let's just read it so you guys can understand the scope of the problem here that we are facing. Because the Vatican creates avenues like this, like YouTube, for a lot of people to get on it. So the idea is this. If you don't create a road for someone, all right, someone is going to create his own road, and he's going to have full access to his own road. So all these avenues or digital avenues for you to post videos, Twitter, social media, is to control and censor information, all right? So they can also have access to the information and can manipulate it and use it to their own benefit. That is the reason why for YouTube. That's the reason why we're working on our own website, okay? So that we can put all the information that you need over there. That's the reason why we wrote the book, because it's the most important thing in the world. The book is the most important because the Vatican can get to anybody online, but they can't get to a book. So when we ask people to get the book, even though the book is expensive, is not our own doing, because it's the price and cost to print books, which is set by the Vatican, because they want to make production of books very, very expensive, so that the normal regular man cannot write books where we can have access to all the information that we need. Because the Vatican does understand the power of a book. A book brought down the Roman Catholic kingdom during the Protestant Reformation, during the the late 1300s to the late 1400s or 1500s. Okay, a book, and that book was the Geneva Bible. They understand the power of a book, so that's why they don't want you to ever get close to a book. They encourage you to do all these things online, digitally, so they can change it. But let's read this again and see why they flagged the video and said that it broke a community guideline strike, because this is strike number 2 on account. They had landed the first one on the Selena Q video, in which we're trying to tell the world that Selena Q, a very popular Hispanic singer, which a lot of people have come to love and like, was not actually the gender that she claimed, that she was rather born male and not female. And with that, they landed a strike on account, and this is the second strike that they are landing on it. So one way or the other, they're going to shut us down. So that's why we encourage you to send us an email and get the book, because we will not be around for a very long time. So let's read this and see this, what they're trying to say on this particular video. They say, YouTubers share their opinions on a wide range of different topics. However, there's a fine line between passionate debate and personal attack. Now, personal attack, on our Real Gender series, we do not attack anybody. On all our videos, we do not attack anybody. We just tell you the real truth. And since we've been grown up, since all of us have been trained rather, and grown up in the era of political correctness, the Vatican tries to badger everybody into accepting its political correctness, so that truth can always be dug underground and put inside a grave. That's all what it's about. So reading this, they say there's a fine line between passionate debate and personal attacks, as the community guidelines outline. YouTube is not a platform for things like predatory behavior. Who were we? What kind of predatory behavior were we exhibiting against, trying to let people know that the people that they call transgender are not really transgender, that they are the gender they claim? That's what the video made, but we'll tell you more reasons why they had to shut that particular video down, and we'll let you guys know in a minute. So it says, YouTube is not a platform for things like predatory behavior, stalking, threats. We weren't stalking anybody. Threats, harassment, bullying, or intimidation. How can we? Is it even possible for us to intimidate somebody? We're just making videos. That's all what we're doing. It keeps on saying, let's keep on reading. It says, we take this issue seriously, and there are no excuses for such behavior. Remove comments, videos, or posts where the main aim is to maliciously harass or attack another user. The whole entire video of the Real Gender Not Transgender series was about telling people that this so-called people that a lot of other YouTubers are making videos about and calling them transgender are not. We were even trying to limit the process of other people harassing other people when they do not have the facts. And here you say that we are badgering somebody. Let's continue reading. It says, if you're not sure whether or not your content crosses the line, we ask that you not post it. So all this is just because YouTube, which is owned by the Vatican itself, is getting scared that the public is getting to know the truth about their world and understand the way things are, and the people who are responsible for it. So all this is a line to shut us down, because if you look at the video itself, let me play the video so you guys can see what it's talking about here. Now, I'm gonna play the video for the first like 5 minutes so you can understand. At the start of this video, we started talking about the hoax of, I think, the Las Vegas shooting, which happened, I think, sometime I think last year. All right. And we talked about that it was a hoax, that the whole idea of that, the hoaxes that's going around in our world, especially with, this gun shootings and everything else, is because the Vatican is trying to take away the Second Amendment, which gives the United States public the right to own guns. And this Second Amendment wasn't written by them, because when you understand history, I suggest that you look for the video on a channel called Real Presidents. There's a playlist on it called The Real Presidents. All right. On that particular video, we make you understand that the reason why the Constitution is trying to be overwritten and thrown under the bus is because the people currently running it, the white or albino people, which we know them by, because white isn't a color. When somebody says they're white, what you're actually saying is that you're an albino, because the word comes from the Latin word albus, which means a lack of melanin, because white isn't a color. There is nobody that's as white paper or the white part of my screen right here. They don't exist. So when you say you're white, what you're actually saying is that you lack melanin. Is from the Latin word albus, and anybody with straight hair is an albino. If you're interested in all that information, get on the channel and look for the playlist called The Myth of Whiteness. It will explain that much more for you in detail, so you can understand that we are all one black people and some people are just albinos. And when by the end of this video, you get to understand a lot of the things that's going on. So I'm going to play this video for the first 5 minutes so you guys can understand that we were talking about the fact that the reason for all the hoaxes that's going on in the United States in particular is because they want to try to override the Constitution, which wasn't written by the present albino or white elites which run the United States and the world. It was written by the presidents, which were actually black woolly haired people, which have been now fabricated to us as being white. And we explained that on that particular playlist or on videos called The Real Presidents, which I suggest that you should go take a look on the channel if it's still around. And with all the videos, please download it and save it, because it might be the only history that we have left. And very, very important, please get a book. We'll display some content on this particular video so you can understand how to get the book. All right, so I'm going to play this short clip so you guys can listen to what was being said on it for the first 5 minutes to understand the reason why they're taking this particular video down. Because even though they're trying to shut us down one way or the other, they're trying to be very sneaky about it. The reason why they picked this video is because we did show that the whole reason for all these hoaxes is because the Vatican wants to take away the Second Amendment, the right to own guns, which protects the people. And this particular video, we're going to be making you understand the reason for white supremacy and the reason for, terrorism. They are both one and the same thing. So when you understand terrorism, then you understand white or albino supremacy. Let's play this short clip, this video that they've landed a strike on an account called The Real Gender, Not Transgender, Transsexual series part number 4. And then we can come back and continue to talk about some few other things before we get into making you guys understand terrorism and white supremacy. And then we're also going to be featuring Richard Gere as the Pretty Woman in the Pretty Woman movie. Hello and welcome to Tricks of the S-Trade channel. Today is the 6th of October 2017. It's a couple of days after the fake Las Vegas shooting, in which a fake number of people got killed and everything else. And now the so-called fake government controlled by the Vatican is trying to pass laws against, I think, bump stock. Bump stock is an attachment that's attached to a semi-automatic rifle that makes it fire quickly. So the best way I can explain it is that guns are divided into how fast they can fire bullets. So you have what they call let's say a semi-automatic gun, then you have a full automatic. All that is dependent on the number of speeds that the bullets can get released from the gun. So for example, with a normal gun, let's say for a normal gun would fire maybe one round, that means one bullet every maybe 3 seconds or thereabout. And then a semi-automatic might fire let's say 7 bullets every second. And then a full automatic would fire up to maybe 100 or say 20 bullets every second. So the type of guns are auto guns is dependent on the speed and the number of bullets that a gun can release every second. So what's happening now is that the so-called government wants to pass laws that prevents people from attaching bump stocks, that attachment that helps the gun to be able to fire more bullets per second into a semi-automatic, therefore making it a full automatic gun. So if it's your first time on the channel, So that's the whole reason for them landing the strike on the account, even though our channel is being targeted, because we are trying to make you guys understand the truth, because there was nothing malicious in this particular video, nothing whatsoever. We weren't badgering anybody. Our videos don't badger anybody at all. We just tell you the raw truth so you can understand the people running your world and why things are the way they are. And that is why we get attacked so much for it. Because there's a particular lady on this particular channel which we think could have been the reason for this strike being landed, because they have so many agents which come in and review the videos, and then when they start talking, and you know this is actual an agent. Let me see if I can get the lady's name so you guys can know who it is. So, I don't believe in coincidences, all right? So you're looking at the comment section of my screen right here, and this was the last person I had a conversation with on that particular video in the comment section, the Real Gender Not Transgender or Transsexual series here. Part number 4. Her screen name goes by Jessica Ames 94. All right, and when she started talking, you know, I could actually tell that maybe she was trying to get some sort of comment or some sort of information so they can say that this is a legal reason for shutting down that video, because I could tell from where she was going, because she started by saying that I'm ignoring stuff, and then she took it to a different direction in which said that I was talking about that I was attacking her. That's what she actually said, when I had no such intention. I did not even attack her. She was saying here, let me see if I can find the comment that she said that I was attacking her. Oh, let me see. Oh, where is that comment right here? Hold on a second, let me read that comment properly. So here it is, as you can see right here. She said here in this particular comment, please just realize that you attacked me for no reason and I'm not delusional. Attack. So this is how you understand how the agents work, because she's the last person, and she would have been the person who's actually working for YouTube, because they can pretend that they're actually YouTubers, but they're actually working for YouTube. They told her, okay, go ahead and look at this particular video, and you know, and let's find out if we can find something to make sure that we block it, because the whole idea of the video, like I said, was just talking about the fact that you know, the hoax is designed to take away the Second Amendment, which was put in place by the black presidents who were the actual presidents of the United States for a very long time. And when you get a video, when you watch the video, The Real Presidents Part 1, then you understand that, because we go into detail to make you understand that a lot of the founding fathers that you think were actually portrayed throughout history as being of pale skin and albinic hair were not. They were actually black, woolly-haired people. But since the Vatican, all right, the current present elites who run the United States are white, they're trying to portray everything in their image. And this goes back to a long, long history in which we're going to talk about and feature a little bit on today's video, so you guys can get a perfect understanding of what's going on in the world. So the Vatican right there landed a strike on account. They're busy and hard at work trying to shut us down. So like we said, please send us an email. Our email is the same as the channel name at gmail.com, and we'll show you there's going to be a banner on the screen so that you guys can get that information, and also get our book, because it might be the only history left. This channel may not be around for very much longer, so please remember that. So let's switch gears now and talk about a few things. For example, we want to talk about understanding albino supremacy, because for you to understand white supremacy, and you have to understand terrorism, right? When you understand terrorism, then you understand white supremacy, and then we also have to explain a lot of stuff, and it's all based on the fact that, you know, the world is primarily made of black, woolly-haired people. You've probably heard these stories very much, that we have 6 billion people on the planet, over 6 billion. And looking at and just judging by that number, 6 billion, you have to understand that the Vatican is lying to you, because that's a Vatican code of numbers. If you want to understand the Vatican code of numbers, please get on the channel and look for the Lisa Lopez video, and it will explain in detail what the Vatican code of numbers is. or get a book in which we go into so much in-depth detail that we couldn't share in the video, so you guys can have a perfect understanding of your world. So that number right there, 6 billion, is not an actual representation of the number of people that we have in the world, but just going off what the official story and stats tell us. They tell us there are 6 billion people, and that 2 billion people in the world are primarily black with woolly hair. If you watch the Black Panther movie, Killmonger, when he was brought into Wakanda and was facing, let's say, the king, T'Challa, in that particular video, they make sure to make Killmonger tell you that the number of black people in the world is 2 billion. Now, why is it so important that they have to tell you that? Because the Vatican always tries to control your mindset. So you have to understand terrorism to understand why the control of your mind is very, very important. Because in all truth speaking, if there are 6 billion people in the world, 4 billion of them are black with woolly hair, and only 2 billion are people with pale skin and straight hair. Now, what does well, we'll explain all that so you can understand in detail why terrorism and white supremacy are both one and the same thing, so you can understand, have a perfect understanding of what we're trying to say. But you're looking at the screen is that the Selena Q video was landed a strike on account for saying that they said that we had nudity and sexual content on it, which they didn't show indicate the minute mark because it didn't exist, because it's just a random strike they landed on the account just trying to shut us down. So if you're interested in watching the Selena Q video, please look for the Bono video on the channel. It will give you instructions on how to watch it. But for the Real Gender Not Transgender series, we do not know if we're going to bring it up on this channel anymore, but there are so many other channels around that are uploading videos which you guys can go look up into. So I'm not going to say the channel name right now, but you'll find it one way or the other if you're looking for our videos. And I want to thank that great subscriber of ours who's doing that fine job of downloading the videos and re-uploading it on his website, which we suggest that everybody should do, so these videos can remain around for a very long time and let people know the truth and understand their world. So let's get into explaining. First of all, okay, let's just look at who we'll be featuring, which happens to be Richard Gere, and then we'll talk about Richard Gere's fine Wikipedia page, your official stats, which is full and littered with the Vatican code of numbers. Then we can go on and explain some of the things that we're going to be talking about in understanding white supremacy and terrorism, and giving you a little bit of historical facts which you guys don't understand, and also show you a little bit of the lies that the albino elite are using to control the majority of the world's population, which happens to be black with woolly hair. Because like we've said before, if there are 6 billion people in this world, 3/4 of them are black with woolly hair, and that is a sound fact. So the whole idea of albino supremacy, which is not just a physical construct, is also a mental construct, is to make black woolly haired people to feel like the minority. Why do they have to make them feel like the minority? Because they are the majority population. And also part of the reason is this, because the possibility of white supremacy or albino supremacy running our world is made possible by black agents, black leaders. So a lot of these black leaders also have to be made to feel like a minority, all right, so that they cannot stand up to white supremacy if all of them all of a sudden have a change of mind. So this whole ideology is to make black people feel that they are the minority population when they are the majority. And we'll show you proof on this particular video, starting with the short clip that I already played before the start of this video. We'll show you some more proof down the line. So I want you to sit on tight. This is going to be a very, very important video. So let's take a look at Richard Gere first. It says Richard Tiffany Gere, born August 31st, 1949. As you can see right there, the Vatican code of numbers is at work, August 31st. He said he's an American actor and humanitarian activist. He began famous in the 1970s, playing a supporting role in Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Now, in his starring roles in Days of Heaven, he came to prominence with his role in the film American Gigolo. Now, the most popular movie which a lot of people know Richard Gere by is the movie called Pretty Woman. So in that particular movie, she was starring with the lady called Julian Roberts, which a lot of people actually think that Julian Roberts is actually a transgender. No. So when we're watching this movie, because it's an old-time movie that my mom used to love watching, and a lot of people didn't understand that when they thought that they were looking at two heterosexual couples in this particular movie, they were actually looking at two homosexuals, as we're going to find out by the end of this video. So please hang on tight and let's get ready and get into this particular video. It's one of the most important videos that you have to watch, because understanding the things that we're talking about is going to make you understand the reason for albino supremacy and a lot of lies that they tell us day in and day out, because it's all about maintaining power, and maintaining power is all about numbers. If you're a minority and you're trying to control a majority population, what you do is use terrorism. Okay, so let's look at the definition of terrorism first. As we can see right here, it says from the Wikipedia page, you could pause the video at any point in time, copy out the link, or just get in your search engine and type out terrorism. It says terrorism is, in the broadest sense, the use of intentionally indiscriminate violence as a means to create terror among masses of people, or fear to achieve a financial, political, religious, or ideological aim. It is used in this regard primarily to refer to violence against peacetime targets or in war against non-combatants. The terms terrorists and terrorism originated during the French Revolution. Now, people, the French Revolution is one of the most important revolutions that you have to study about to understand terrorism. Now, under the official stories that we're told about terrorism is that the king of France at that particular time and the French people ran out of food. So there was no food, and this led to the terrorist acts that was being committed, and the monarchy of France being removed, so that there is no monarchy, and they brought about the democratic process of France. But this is absolutely very, very false. The reason for the French Revolution was not based on a lack of food or the French community running out of food. It was because the Vatican was hoarding the food. Now, why do I keep talking about hoarding the food? The Vatican controls us because they feed us. A lot of people have been made to frown upon planting their own crops and growing their own animals to feed themselves. So our whole food supply is dependent on the Vatican, because they are the ones feeding us, because a lot of us don't till the ground, a lot of us don't plant the crops and grow our own animals. And secondly, the Vatican all around the world has been making land use acts which take away the right of property, the right of ownership of land, away from the owners to the government, such that owning land and planting your own crops even becomes a problem. So the reason why terrorism does exist or started in the French Revolution is because the Vatican controls what we eat. If everybody is to get involved in how they feed themselves, that means planting their own crops and growing their own animals, a lot of the effects of albino or white supremacy, as we call it, will not be in existence in our daily lives. So that's what we have to come to understand most importantly about the French Revolution. It started with food. It started with the Vatican hoarding the food. It wasn't a lack of food. There was food everywhere. They hoarded it because they controlled the food supply during the French Revolution. So you have to understand that. So let's get into talking about. I want you to pay special attention to the words, because I've always been saying on most of our videos that if you pay attention to the words, you will not be confused. But most of us don't pay attention to the words. You have to pay specific attention to the words that are being used on you every day, day in, day out. Okay? To understand, because when you understand the tenses and the words, you understand who's behind it. So let's take a look at the meaning of terrorism again and read it slowly so you can pay special attention to the phrases that are being used to frame the meaning of terrorism. So first of all, it says terrorism in the broadest sense, right? The use of intentionally indiscriminate violence. So you have to understand that terrorism, first of all, uses indiscriminate violence, okay, as a means to create terror among the masses of people. All right, masses of people, indiscriminate violence among masses of people. Is that what we're seeing every day in today's world? terrorism, like random acts, shooting everywhere in the United States, especially, and around the Western world, and even in the so-called underdeveloped countries or third world countries that they label a lot of black woolly haired countries to be. Terrorism is used to control the masses, because without fear, you can control the people and make them do what you intend them to do. So those are the first things you need to understand about terrorism. Is indiscriminate violence is used among masses of people. So what does that tell you? That the people running terrorism are a minority. So who is the minority at this point? The minority in all, for all intents and purposes, remains your government, right? So you have to understand, for example, that if a population of a country or world is 100%, all right, 99% are the masses. The 1% will be the government. So based on this definition of terrorism, it's a minority, okay, controlling a majority through indiscriminate violence and other things. Now let's keep on reading so you can understand the whole idea about terrorism. He says, indiscriminate violence is a means to create terror among masses of people or fear to achieve a financial, all right? So fear is used to achieve a financial aim, political aim, religious or ideological aim. So the four things that terrorism helps build is this: finances, controls the economy, controls the politics, controls the religions, and controls an ideology, in which in today's term we can say political correctness. So financial has to do with how you survive, how you feed, how you clothe yourself, and how you live, your social status in society. Politics means the ideology about you being controlled, all right? Religious means the ideology about deity, all right, who you believe to be above you in everything else. That is all what this means. So when you understand the meaning of terrorism, then you're going to understand the meaning of white supremacy, or albino supremacy as we call it. I hope I've made sense so far by what I'm talking about. So terrorism is used by a minority. In the actual sense in this explanation, the minority is the government, to control the masses. As you can see here, that means a greater number of people, so that they can achieve a financial, political, religious, or ideological aim. So that is the reason for terrorism in your world, is to control the masses and use them to achieve a financial, political, religious, or ideological aim. So using that definition in perspective on white supremacy, the reason for white supremacy is to be able to control the majority of the masses, which happens to be black woolly haired people. All right? Because this is what terrorism does. Terrorism makes you have an under siege mentality, because everywhere we go now, we're very conscious of security, right? When you're conscious of your security, you're going to do what the government tells you to do, so that you can be more secure in your property and spaces of being. Is the same application that is being used with albino supremacy. Albino supremacy seeks to control the majority of the population, who happens to be black with woolly hair. So they have to be made to be afraid. They have to be made to be feel like they are the minority, because in terrorism, the majority is made to feel like they are minority, because they are always under siege and attack. Does it make sense? So it creates a mental mindset for you to believe that you're always going to be under attack and that you are a minority. So if you understand, the whole population of the world is much more than the population of the government that controls it. But they have been made to think like that they are a minority, and that these small terrorists have more power than them. So that's the whole idea right there. So with that said, for you to understand the meaning of terrorism, we're going to take a look at how all things started, all right, and why albino supremacy exists in our world. To have this understanding, we have to first of all understand the truth about the continents, which we already showed a video at the beginning of this particular video. We showed you a little clip about the true size of the continents. All right, if you're going to control a majority population, which is the dominant population, and you know that it's physically impossible, because let's say, for example, if two people get into a fight with 100,000 people, two people are going to naturally lose because they are the minority. If you are to control and win that fight against 100,000 people that you're coming against, you have to use subversion tactics to do so, to make the majority believe that you are more than them. Okay? So to understand this story, we need to understand the population of the world based on the continents. And we're going to start this question by asking the question on Google. The question is going to be, which is the largest continent in the world? So please follow me here from now on henceforth and pay specific attention to my words, okay? We're going to start this by asking the question, which is the largest continent in the world, okay? So let's ask that question and get an answer on Google. So the question here is asked on Google. It says the largest continent in the world. You guys can type it on any search engine and find out the results. The result will always be the same across any search engine because they're all controlled by the Vatican. It says Asia, generally identified by convention. All right. Now you have to pay specific attention to the words, because it's the words that is gonna get you. Because when you pay specific attention to the words, you're gonna know if you're being told a lie or not. It says generally identified by convention. That means it's not the truth. And when you read those words, say generally identified by convention. If it was the truth that Asia was the largest continent in the world, it would tell you emphatically that based on the analysis and all geographical measurements, that Asia would be the largest continent in the world. But they are not saying so. They're saying generally identified by convention, rather than any strict criteria. Up to 7 regions are commonly regarded as continents, ordered from largest in size to smallest. They are Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Antarctica, Europe, and Australia. And that means Asia, being named first, is the largest continent in the world by convention, not by truth. Okay? So I want you guys to pay specific attention to the words, because this is how people get caught up in lies. You are not looking at the words. You're just accepting what's being told to you. You have to pay attention from now henceforth. So by convention, they're telling you that Asia is the largest continent in the world. Why Asia? Why is it by convention? We have to go back into history to understand where we're going here. And I suggest a lot that you watch the Width of Whiteness on our channel, the playlist. Now, to understand all things, you have to understand that the so-called people with straight hair and albinic skin, who happen to be the elite right now in this world, the leaders per se, have their origins in Asia. Okay, that's number one thing you have to get to understand this. They have their origins in Asia. Okay? Now, Asia was not always made of people with straight hair and pale skin. It was run and owned by a lot of people with woolly hair. Okay? The original Asians, everybody around the world, the original people of all lands, have always been black with woolly hair. Now, something happened in Asia that started changing the population from woolly hair, all right, to straight hair. and it's called albinism. Albinism is called by inbreeding. So for example, if you want to know how albinism really works, you have to get into animal husbandry. So for example, if you take a male and a female goat, all right, male and female, for example, or any other animal around there, and you're trying to breed as much of them as you possibly can, you would notice that after, let's say, the 5th or 4th generation, these animals start getting sick. They start having albinism, all right? They start lacking color and all other attributes that are associated with albinism. They are going to have maybe some sort of, problem with eyesight. They get sickly. No matter the food that you feed them, the animals remain sick. Why is it so? Because albinism has set in. And how is albinism set in? Albinism is set in when a close family, a nuclear family started with the mother and father, continue inbreeding among themselves with their siblings without marrying outside or bringing any external person outside into that nuclear family. Over a period of time, albinism sets in. So in Asia, this was the practice. In Asia. Okay? Now, during that particular time when a lot of the black woolly-haired Asians all around the world, not around the world, a lot of the black woolly-haired Asians were inbreeding, they were reproducing more children with straight hair and pale skin. Now, these children were weak. They couldn't do a lot of stuff. Okay? A lot of stuff like, travel long distances and carry heavy loads. When you get into the Myth of Whiteness series, we explain all that. It's a 15-part series, so we won't have a lot of time to get into that. If you want to understand more, then you can get a book and you'll get a perfect understanding of that. So what happened was they were producing a lot of children that were very weakly. So because of this, a caste system was instigated in Asia to make sure that the children that they were giving birth to would not, all right, get into leadership positions and become leaders of the Asian society. And this happened, and this went on for a very long time very well. But they were still producing more children with straight hair and pale skin. And a lot of these children did not like the idea that they were being looked upon as second-class citizens, as black people all around the world today are. Okay? So now remember, all this was happening in Asia. All right? And the Roman Empire, which was black with woolly-haired people, started to fall. And they had controlled that part of, keeping like the Asians in Asia and everything else for a very long time. And so were the Arabs, which have always been African black woolly-haired people. So now what happened was, after the Roman Empire fell, and the system of kings which came out from Europe, which was a black woolly-haired continent, came into being, the system of kings led by the Vatican at that time, which was black with woolly hair, wanted Jerusalem to be their own center or headquarters. Now, the things that were one of the things that prevented the Romans from having Jerusalem in the first place before the system of kings that came to abide in Europe under the woolly-haired Vatican was the Hebrews, the so-called Hebrews, which are no longer existent today because of what the Romans did. All right. So the Hebrews prevented them for a while, and then after the Hebrews were removed by the Roman Empire, and a lot of them, in trying to escape, intermingled and lost a lot of their Hebrew traditions and ways, and became known as other regular people, Europeans, Africans, or whatever you want to call them, which were all black with woolly hair. Then after the Roman Empire fell, the system of kings still tried to get Jerusalem, but now the black woolly-haired Arabs were in control. So the Vatican decided to find a way to get the Jerusalem under the control, and they brought about Islam. Islam was the ideology that they gave to Muhammad, so that when he could unite all the various Arab ethnicities under his own and control them, then he could cede Jerusalem back to the Vatican. But this didn't happen because Muhammad died. And when Muhammad died, Islam split into Sunni and Shiite, and those people couldn't come to an understanding of what they should do with Jerusalem. Rather, they decided to build their mosque, as you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Dome in Jerusalem, and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, they decided, well, because the leaders of Islam do understand that Islam is a creation of Christianity from the Vatican. They understood that, and they said, okay, we can be as powerful as the Christian people, so we don't need to succeed to them. All right, we don't need to bow down and be subservient to them. Let's make our own kingdom as well. And from then, those Arab Muslims or African Arabs, because Arabs have always been African, black woolly head Arab people, decided to try to invade into Europe. But this was only before the Crusades, because the Crusades was the idea of trying to get Jerusalem back from the Arabs, in which the European kings were fighting over. So during this fight, during the Crusades, a lot of the Arab armies and the European armies were depleted. They fought themselves to a standstill, and then the Arabs, which have always been African, decided, okay, we want to get into Black Europe at this point in time and just take out the Vatican, all right, and be our own lords over our own selves. But during this fight from the Crusades and the fights during for the ownership of Jerusalem, their armies were depleted for centuries, years after, and this gave rise to the albino Asian hordes in Asia to start, first of all, attacking the African Arabs, the black woolly head Arabs, attacking also the black lords which they had in Asia at that point in time, because the black people were the royalty right over there, the woolly head people. They started attacking them because a lot of this Arab armies were depleted, and the European armies were depleted, fighting themselves over the ownership of Jerusalem during the Crusades. So when this happened, a lot of the alliances they had with the Asian lords, all right, became fractious. They couldn't keep, that kind of, let's say, relationship anymore. And this started breaking down the Asian community, because the Asian community now was always producing more albino children. These albino kids of pale skin and straight hair did not like the idea of being, second-class citizens. So when the Crusades destroyed the whole of, the armies, the Asians, all right, started killing off their black people in Asia first. The Arabian and the African Arabs and the woolly head, all black people from Europe and Africa who had depleted themselves fighting during the Crusades, couldn't protect themselves from this insurgents that was coming in from Asia after it had destroyed its own black woolly head Asian community. Now, one of the most important people in history, which the albino Vatican doesn't want you to know, because when you start studying this person, you're going to understand the history of where people with straight hair and pale skin come from, is Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was responsible for uniting a lot of Asia, all right, Asia into becoming a single fighting unit that was killing off a lot of people, including their black woolly haired lords. Genghis Khan is the most murderous figure in all of human history. He's the one person who has killed more people than the whole history of the world combined from start to finish. Genghis Khan, for example, went into a place called Iran, which was made primarily of black woolly haired Arabs. It's noted that in history, it is known that that particular place, the Persian, or let's say the Iranian country, at that particular time in history, that particular town which Genghis Khan went into had over 2 million people. By the time Genghis Khan left Iran, that particular part of Iran, it had less than 200,000 people in it. He killed over 1.8 million people, I think, during like a 4-year span that he was there. So Genghis Khan is the most murderous figure of all of human history. So it was now Genghis Khan who united a lot of, a lot of people with straight hair and albinic skin who had grievances against their black woolly-haired lords into become a single fighting unit. So the whole reason why Asia is rid of a lot of woolly-haired people is because of Genghis Khan. Wherever Genghis Khan went and his generals, they decimated the whole place and killed off a lot of black woolly-haired people. And a lot of them went into hiding from India, Japan, China, Mongolia, where he came from. Then he moved into Russia. Russia was one of the first places that Genghis Khan attacked after the Russia was decimated by trying to get Jerusalem, because Russia is part of Europe also. They were led by a lot of European kings, woolly-haired kings. Russia was primarily made of black woolly-haired people. So with Genghis Khan, he moved into Russia. Then he moved into part of North Africa. He moved into Europe. And before Genghis Khan died, he said that the one thing that he hadn't done was to conquer the whole world. And he commissioned his generals, all right, to do so. Those generals today and Genghis Khan himself have their lineage all traced down to the current people who are running the world today in the Vatican, all around the world. So when Genghis Khan commissioned these people, because of the Crusades brought about the depletion of the Arab armies and European armies. They couldn't stand the onslaught that came on after from Genghis Khan, who totally took over Asia, all of Asia, and killed off a lot of black woolly-haired people and went into Europe. Now here is where the problem lies and why albino supremacy, or white supremacy as we call it, comes into play. The majority of the world's population is black with woolly hair. So the generals are now facing a problem. Now, before I even go further, I have to answer one question. The reason why a lot of people around the world don't know, who have straight hair and albinic skin, because you have to understand that only cultures that promote like cousin marriages, which actually is sibling marriages, and let's say a lot of monarchies around the world who marry from their own siblings or own families, which breeds albinism, making people to come out with straight hair and albinic skin, is that when all this people, when there is no, the best way to put it is this: when there is no sibling or cultures which promote the marrying of siblings, okay, and the inbreeding with siblings and next of kin, okay, these people cannot come out with straight hair and pale skin. You can only come out with straight hair and pale skin if you have that kind of culture. So when Genghis Khan, all right, and his generals were moving through Asia into North Africa, into Europe, they faced a particular problem. The natural state of a man is black with woolly hair. So that's why, for example, you will notice that anytime somebody who is black reproduces children with somebody who has straight hair and pale skin, the children come out black, because that's the natural state. Having straight hair and pale skin is a recessive trait. Genghis Khan and his people now faced a particular problem. The problem is that the dominant genes, all right, the natural state of man is black with woolly hair. And if you are to rule the world, okay, like Genghis Khan commissioned his generals to do, and these people are a majority, how are you going to make that happen? Okay? Before I go any further, then I have to just interject at this point. The reason why a lot of people with straight and pale skin don't know that they have their origins in Asia, because when these generals of Genghis Khan and the albino lords went all over the world, they started killing off a lot of black woolly haired people, just like they were doing in Asia, just like Genghis Khan commanded them to do. So for example, Mexicans today come out with straight hair and pale skin, when Mexicans were never ever straight hair and pale skin. It's something recent that happened during when the people from Asia had overtaken Europe, and from Europe they went into North and South America and started killing off a lot of the black woolly haired people, even from Australia as well, and changed the genetics of those people from black with woolly hair to straight hair with pale skin, and use racism to make that happen. The reason why a lot of people don't know that they have Genghis Khan or Asian blood and don't look Asian is because when Genghis Khan and his people and his generals were moving all through the black woolly haired nations, whenever they reproduced with any of these black woolly haired people, they would lose some of these Asian features of slant eyes and everything else, and then they come out looking so different from where they started from in Asia. Okay, so that's the reason why a lot of people don't understand that they have Asian blood. So anybody with straight hair and pale skin outside of Asia, you're in Europe, or you're in North or South America or Australia, North Africa, they have their origins in Asia. They are Asians. When you get a book, you get that full understanding. So here's what the reason for white supremacy. The dominant population is black with woolly hair. In order to remain the elite, because you cannot kill them all, number one. Number two, the natural state of man is black with woolly hair, which means that you're fighting against your own nature, trying to remain in a straight hair and pale skin complexion. You have to find a way to subjugate the majority of the population mentally, because when you subjugate them mentally, you can control them physically, because the mind rules over the body. So for example, a lot of black people around the world live in fear. That's the obvious truth. They live in fear because they think that they are the minority, because they've been taught throughout history here meaning whatever you see, whatever you read, whatever you hear on the media, that there are more people of pale skin and straight hair than them, because they've given you the idea that Asia is the largest continent in the world. Not in truth, as they say here, but identified by convention rather than any strict criteria, because they're trying to tell you right here that's a lie. Okay, for people who don't know how to read. So you have to make them feel that they are the minority population, the majority of the world's population, which is black with woolly hair. Because like I've said before, in Africa alone, Africa has the world's greatest population outside of anybody else that's not in Africa. So that means the whole entire population of Africa is more than the entire population of the world. That is just basic truth. So if you're trying to control a majority population and you know you can win it physically. So for example, during the Second World War, if you did notice this, the First and Second World War was fought entirely in Europe and Asia. Why did they avoid Africa? Because Africa has the largest population in the world, and if they went into Africa and fought that war, the First or Second World War in Africa, it would have united the whole black people in Africa, and the albino elite would lose, because population, the greatest population, always wins. This is a normal fact of everyday life. Two people cannot win a war against 100,000 people or 100 people. It is physically impossible. So that's why they needed to avoid the whole of Africa, because if they went into Africa and they had a war, a physical confrontation that was very physical, the greatest population that war would have united the whole of the black population in Africa, which is the greatest population in the world, and they would not be able to win. So that's why Genghis Khan could not win over in Africa. He only went into a tiny bit of North Africa and stopped from somewhere between Egypt and Libya, and that's it. So in order to control a majority of a population, you have to use terrorism, the use of fear, the use of any kind of subversion tactics, so that the majority population does not realize that they are the majority, because when they realize that, then the albino elite who are currently running the world cannot be in power. So all they use is mind control tactics. The first one they tell you here is to make you believe that Asia is the largest continent, because the largest continent will always have the greatest number of people. So if you make us believe that Asia has the largest continent in the world, we are going to believe that the greatest number of population is in the world in Asia, as they make us believe in India and China. So that will always give the black woolly haired people and the black woolly haired agents, which they're used to run the black people around the world, the idea of a minority status, that they are the minority, and so they'll always have that under siege mentality and fear mentality that they are going to get wiped out. So that's number one. So now let us now find out for real if Asia, as they tell us, is the largest continent in the world. We're going to do a little bit of mathematics on this one. So what we're going to take a look is that we're going to take a look at the whole width of the Asian land today, all right? And we're going to take a look at that based on the fact that there is such a road called the Silk Road. The Silk Road spans the whole of Asia into Europe, which is what I want to show you on the next frame. So hold on a second. So you can pause the video at any point in time, copy out this link, and we're looking at the Silk Road, all right? So because we want to make sure that this whole lie in which they tell us that Asia is the largest continent in the world is false. It's a terrorism mindset. So albino supremacy can thrive, because in order to control the majority of the world's population, you have to use terrorism, because that's the whole idea of terrorism, the minority controlling the majority, which is used in our everyday lives as we see today, because it's through fear that the world's population can be controlled. It's not based on any truth. So you could pause the video, like I said, copy out this link, and go read up on it to understand the Silk Road. Now, Silk Road facts. It said Chinese name here, Chinese pinyin, Xing Shu Zilu, English translation, Silk Road. The length of the Silk Road is 4,350 miles. So please pay very special attention to the numbers and the words as I'm speaking right here, because if you miss me at this point, you're going to miss the whole entire reason for the video. So I want you to remember these numbers right here. Silk Road spans the whole entire continent of Asia, and let me show you that on a map. So here is a picture of the Silk Road. The Silk Road spans the whole entire Asian continent, and remember the numbers I told you. They said it was 4,350 miles of it. So the Silk Road goes all the way from the coast of Mongolia here, right, which is very close to the shores of Japan, and travels all the way down into Europe and ends right here in Italy. And the length of this entire road is 4,350 miles. So remember that number, please. Pay attention, put it in your memory. So let's go back to what we're trying to say right here as we read from the Silk Road. So the Silk Road here says active the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD. Location. So the Silk Road goes from, let me read it again right here. It says the Silk Road goes from Asia to Europe, passing through China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Greece, and Italy. So the Silk Road ends up in Italy, and the total number of miles, okay, let's read up again here. It says The total number of miles says is 4,350 miles. Now let's read up on what it says here. It says, world's oldest and longest trade route. The term Silk Road in a narrow sense refers to an Asian overland trade route from let me read it again. It says, the term Silk Road in a narrow sense refers to an Asian overland trade route formed in the Western Han Dynasty, 202 BC to 980. This route stretched 4,350 miles from Shagan, today's Xi'an, to Western China, Central Asia, and even to Europe, enabling these regions to have better communications in diplomacy, business, and culture. So the Silk Road spans the whole of Asia, right? I want you to remember that, and gets into Europe. And the total number of miles where it ends in Italy, all the way from the East Coast, somewhere around in Mongolia, Asia, all the way down, ends up in Italy right here. Stretches all this across. Now, this is a look at the world map, which I want you guys to take a good look at. All right. So it says the Silk Road starts around right here and goes all the way across these countries, as you can see right here. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Goes all the way across all this Asian continent, all the way down here to Italy, where it terminates. And it's a total of 4,350,000 miles. All right. Now, taking a look at this particular map right here, you can see that Africa looks very, very small compared to Asia. Remember, they told you that Africa was smaller, that Asia is the largest continent by convention. That means it's not based on any truth. So Africa compared to Asia here looks very, very small. And the whole entire Silk Road distance, that means the whole entire width of Asia down to Europe in Italy, is 4,350 miles. Remember those words. Now let's get down into Africa, because we want to see the comparisons based on the river, the Nile River in Africa. So we want to take a look at how long the Nile River is in Africa, the length, because this will tell you, how big the African continent is, because the Nile River is the longest river in the world in a straight line, as this picture will show you right here. As you can see right here, let me see if I can blow this up. You can see right here, the Nile River starts somewhere in this lake right here, which is somewhere in Lake Victoria, which is somewhere in Tanzania and Kenya, and goes all the way down to Egypt right here in a straight line. So what is the length of the Nile River is the question we have to answer right now. So the length of the Nile River is 4,258 miles. So that means the only difference between the whole entire length of the Silk Road, remember the Silk Road right here, where is it again? The Silk Road right here is 4,350 miles, all right? The Nile River is 4,258 miles. And the Nile River does not cover the whole entire length of Africa. It only covers 2 feet of it, as you can tell from this picture. It starts somewhere right here in Lake Victoria in Tanzania, and goes all the way up to Egypt here, where it drains out. It doesn't cover the whole entire length. It doesn't even cover half the continent, just 2 feet of it. So if this entire length of River Nile, which is in a straight line, goes all the way down here, is 4,350 miles, or 4,250 miles, as it says here. Where is it again? It's 4,258 miles. And the Silk Road is 4,350 miles. So that means there is only 100-mile difference from the Nile River in Africa running in a straight line, being the same width of the Silk Road, which would be the width of the Asian continent all the way to Europe. So the Nile River is the same length, if you want to call it that way, as the width, all right, of the Silk Road that spans the whole of Asia into Europe. So what does that tell you? And meanwhile, the Nile River only covers 2 feet of Africa, as you can see right here. 2 feet of it, not even half of the continent. 2 feet. And it's the same size as the length of the entire width of the Asian continent all the way to Europe. So that means that Asia, based on that, can fit into Africa and not even take half the space of the whole continent of Africa. Based on that alone. So you can see why white supremacy or albino supremacy wants to make you believe that Asia, let's go back into that question again. Where is it? That Asia is the largest continent in the world because the albinos who are running it come from Asia. And they are continuing on from where Genghis Khan stopped, in which he told them that the one thing that he failed to do was to dominate or control the whole world. That he had dominated Asia, Europe, and part of North Africa. That they should now go ahead and finish it up and control and own the whole world. So now they are faced with a problem because the albino elite are trying to remain in their albino status and trace their lineage back to Genghis Khan as albinos, and they don't want to get bred out. So they have to make the majority of the world's population, which is black with woolly hair, to believe that they are of a minority, that they are not the majority of the world's population. So they start this concept by telling you that Asia is the greatest continent in the world, or the largest continent in the world. So you can have the idea that there are more people in Asia, and hence make black people always feel like they're under siege at every point in time in their lives. That is the whole idea for this. Because as we've shown you now, right here, Africa is the largest continent in the world and not Asia, because the length of the river Nile, just from here, right, all the way to Egypt, is not even half the length of the continent of Africa. But that length fits the whole entire length of Asia, all the way from China down to Europe here in Italy. The length of the river Nile running in Africa. And let's look at let's take a look at the number of countries that the river Nile actually crosses, so you guys can have a perfect understanding of this. It says the Nile River, which is 4,258 miles long, is an international river, and its drainage basin covers 11 countries. That means it runs through just 11 countries. And how many countries are there in Africa? Let's find that question out so you guys can understand what's going on. So I typed the question just to give you an idea. So the Nile River only covers 11 countries, and Africa, according to the Google stats, it says that Africa has 54 countries. So the Nile River just covers 11. So that means the whole entire Asian continent just fits into 11 countries in Africa. 11. That means you have 43 countries left. And those 43 countries will fit the whole entire continents of the world, all amassed together in it, if Asia is the largest continent. So let's go read up on those countries that the Nile River covers. It covers Tanzania, it covers Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, Republic of the Sudan, and Egypt. That is the number of countries that the Nile River covers. And it's the same width and distance as the whole entire width of Asia continent down into Europe. Not just Asia, but Asia into Europe. Another tip for you guys just to understand is that Europe has always been part of Africa. It's only been differentiated now because the albino Asians who run the world through the Vatican reside in Europe. So that's why they wanted to attribute Europe to them. But Europe has always been African, and it's always been run by woolly-haired people, black people, Africans, like West Africans. So that is the whole idea of making us believe that Asia is the largest continent in the world, because it's a fraud. Because once you believe, because the albino elites know that once you have that idea, then you believe that there are more people in Asia than more people in Africa. But what they do every day tells you that there are more people on the African continent than the whole entire world. For example, they tell you that AIDS came from Africa. All right? Why? So that people would always be afraid, especially people of straight hair and pale skin would always believe that Africans have AIDS, so that the majority of so that they can maintain that small population of people with straight hair and albinic skins, because they know that once people marry Africans or have children with Africans, the children come out Africans or black. Or once blacks marry anybody else that has or to have children with people that have straight hair and pale skin, the children come out black. So it's a numbers game. A minority trying to control the majority of the world's population. So everything that you've been taught throughout life or throughout history has always been false. It's all about maintaining the system of white supremacy handed down by Genghis Khan because he wanted to rule the world like his black lords in Asia were doing. And he was aggrieved by it that he was not made to be a leader because of how weak that pale skin and people with straight hair come out to be when compared to black people all around the world, which you see every day in athletics. The strongest, fastest people are all black with woolly hair. That's what happened in Asia. And that's why the reason for the caste system. It wasn't a perfect system. I'm not saying that the caste system was perfect or anything. I'm not promoting anybody or anything. I'm not promoting anybody with black hair or whatever or black people. I'm just telling you the truth with facts so you understand what's going on. So that's why a lot of the population practices in Africa is meant to limit the population of Africans. So that's why they introduced AIDS, because AIDS is not a disease. AIDS is you can only get AIDS when you take the drugs that are supposed to cure AIDS. AIDS is not a disease, a fabrication by the government, by the Vatican government in conjunction with the CDC and the United States government, which the Vatican runs. So that's why AIDS is in Africa. That's why Ebola is in Africa. That's why all the crazy diseases and everything are in Africa, because it's all a ploy to limit the population of Africans, which is the majority of the world's population, in all truth and honesty. Just based on what I've shown you, that Africa is the largest continent in the world and would fit every other continent inside it. The present continent that they call Africa today, or they describe as Africa. That's just basic fact. It's all a game of numbers. Terrorism is used to control the majority of the population. Terrorism is albino supremacy or white supremacy. It's used to control the majority of the world's population, which is black with woolly hair. And this is the reason why all these lies are told, so that black people can have an under-siege mentality and have a minority mentality, just like terrorism makes everybody to have a minority status by living in fear of a fabricated enemy who cannot, in all literal sense, all right, take out the majority of the world's population. The governments of this world are not greater than their population. That's just fact. The only way to control the majority of it is through fear and terrorism tactics. That is the reason for all this. So I hope you guys have learned something already. Let's just switch gears right now and get into the transvestigation of Richard Gere, Pretty Woman, so we can wrap up this video. And like I said, with every video that we have on this channel, please download it, save it. It might be the only important information that you have on history in your world. And get our book. We are not just trying to sell you a book. We're trying to put something in your hands that the Vatican can't tamper with. So you can have this truth, because they will shut this channel down. They will do it. We don't know how long it's going to last, but they will do it. They're working day in and night to do so, because they don't want you to know the truth. Okay? So let's get into the transvestigation of Richard Gere and wrap up this video. So before I get into the transvestigation of Richard Gere, Pretty Woman, I just want to talk to our first-time subscribers. We don't know if the channel is going to be on for a very long time, so that's why we suggested with every video that you have or that you watch on this channel, please download it and save it, re-upload it. Do whatever you want with the video. The video is made for you, so you can know the truth and spread the truth around with people who are interested. So if it's your first time on our channel and you want to watch this video. I mean, you've watched it up to this point, but since you've already watched it, but we advise that you also watch the primer video also. Because if you don't watch the primer video, a lot of the things that I've talked about, you're going to have a basic foundation for understanding what we're saying. So go on the channel and look for the video called primer video. It's the most important video that you have to watch on this channel. There's actually a playlist for it. It has like 4 more videos, and we actually have a primer part 2 up now on the channel. It's very important that you watch those videos and you have an understanding of whatsoever we've talked about up to this point. So with any video that we have on this particular channel, we suggest that you always get, if you're a new time subscriber, first time subscriber, take a look at the description section. The description section has a link. The link is going to say take you to a document. We advise that you download this document and study it for yourselves so you can understand and know the visual differences between male and female. If we lived in a perfect world, this document would fit into making you understand the differences between male and female based on the primary and secondary male or female characteristics. But we do not live in a perfect world. What does that mean? That means there are hormones fed in our food, water, clothing that's making females to look like males or have secondary male characteristics instead of secondary female characteristics. So that means, for example, a female can have facial hair, can have a very deep masculine voice, can grow an Adam's apple, and that makes her to have those male secondary characteristics instead of the female secondary characteristics. The same thing with males also. You see males have feminine voice, have some sort of breast tissue, no Adam's apple, no facial hair, because of all the hormones that are fed in our food, water, clothing, and air we breathe, which is designed by the Vatican to make the whole population of the world weak so they can be controlled. So that's the whole idea behind that. So please study this document, but always pay special attention to the primary skeletal difference between male and female, because hormones can corrupt the body in such a way that it can change the muscles, the skin, the water content and fat content, but nothing can change the skeletal structure. That's why we always stick to the skeletal structure. And like we've always said on our video, on all our videos, this is a different kind of channel. It's an educational channel. It's not meant for everyone. So we don't appreciate anybody coming on the channel and slandering people at will. If you want to say or label someone a transgender, you have to supply facts based on the female skeletal structure, because a woman is designed to give birth. Her skeletal structure is designed to give birth, and that's what differentiates the sexes. And so that's what we always stick to on our channel. So if you come on the channel, you cannot use the secondary or male and female characteristics to say that someone is a transgender or not. As you have noticed, if you've watched this video up to this point, the Vatican is trying to shut us down by saying that we are badgering people, when that's not what we're doing. We're just trying to show you the truth so you understand your world better. Okay? So always, if you're going to label someone a transgender in the comment section, you have to supply your facts based on the female skeletal structure in links of pictures showing that the person has or does not have hips below the crotch, an arch in the back, a pelvis that's tilted forward, and a wide pubic arch, which makes her to be female and differentiates the sexes. Okay, so always stick to that. So with that, let's just jump into this document, because we are about to finish the transvestigation of Richard Jury right here. A female has an arch in her back. And why does a woman have an arch in her back? Because the pelvis of a female is tilted forward. The pelvis of a female is tilted forward because a baby needs to be able to stay inside the pelvic region for the 9 months of conception before he or she is born into this world. And the reason for the arch is also because the arch distributes the weight of pregnancy across the body so that the woman doesn't have any problems walking and hurting herself or her baby. So that's why a female has an arch in her back. A deep C arch in the back, depending if you draw the arch from below the shoulder blades. If you draw it from high above the shoulder blades, it's going to form an S-shaped arch in the back. So that's why a female has an arch in the back. So remember those 2 letters for a female's back: S-shaped arch in the back or a C-shaped arch in the back. For males, males do not have any arch in their back, because a man is not designed to give birth like a woman. A man doesn't have a pelvis a man doesn't have a pelvis that's tilted forward like a female, and he has a straight pelvis. So that's why his back is also straight. There is no arch in that back, because males do not get pregnant. If a man's back wants to arch, it's going to arch outwards in the shape of a D, as you can see right here. So a man's back is straight, is shaped like a D or a P. So remember those letters. I scroll further into the document just to show you that a female's back will always arch much more than that of a man, because her pelvis is tilted forward. As you can see right here is a female kneeling down. She has a deep C arch in her back because her pelvis is tilted forward. And it doesn't matter if the female's got muscles. It doesn't matter the size. She's big, she's tall, she's small. whatever size that she comes in, she's fat, whatever name you want to give to it. A female always has an arch in the back, irrespective of the color of her skin, texture of hair, ethnicity, water content, body fat. A woman always has an arch in the back. As you can see right here, a big female to the left of a screen, there's an arch in the back and the pelvis is tilted forward. A smaller female, arch in the back and the pelvis is tilted forward. Doesn't matter if the female got muscles, because like we've told you before, nothing can change the skeletal structure once it's set at conception. That is why from dead remains you can determine the sex of the person based on the skeleton, the bones, because females are shaped a certain way to give birth and males are not. So as you can see right here, there's a female right here and she has an arch in the back. No matter the drugs she's taking trying to gain a lot of muscles like a man, the drugs can only change the water content, the skin content, the muscle content, and the fat content, and that's it. So no matter what drugs you take, if you're somebody trying to mutilate yourself into believing and thinking that you can be a gender different from the gender that you were born with, that's the only thing those changes are going to affect. Just the muscle content, the water content, the fat content, and that's it. But nothing will change the skeletal structure. The skeletal structure will always remain the skeletal structure you were born with. So there's another muscular female right here, arch in the back, and as you can see right there, nothing can change that skeletal structure. So let's go over and play a short clip in which we show you the major difference, because sometimes if you get lost trying to find the arch in the back, what you should attack the most is the hips, because woman's hips is below the crotch. Why is a woman's hips below the crotch? A woman's hips is below the crotch so that she can have easy access to childbirth, and the hips should be out of the way from the pelvis. Okay, so that's why a female's hips are below the crotch. A man's hips is going to be above his crotch and not below it, because a man's hips is above the crotch so that the male genitalia can be outside the body and function at optimal temperature as it was designed to be. So that's why a man's hip is above the crotch, because the hips determine where the end of the torso of the body is. For females, the end of the torso is below the crotch. For males, it's above the crotch. So that's why a woman has an acute Q angle also, because her hips are below the crotch and she has a wider pelvis. Why is it a wider pelvis? So the baby can stay inside the womb. So a female has a wider pelvis, and because of that she has a wider pubic arch. The pubic arch is the space in between the thighs, and for females it's wider than that of a man. A female has at least, at the most, 120-degree pubic arch at the minimum. A man has at the maximum a 90-degree pubic arch. That means a man's pubic arch can be more than 90 degrees. For females, the minimum is 120 degrees. And because of that wide pubic arch that a female has, everything in the pelvic region is farther apart in the body. All right, farther apart in the pelvis rather. And so that's why the hips are wider. All right, and that's why a female has an hourglass figure. A female has an acute Q angle. The Q angle is the angle between the hip and the knee. And for female, it starts below the crotch, and for males, it's above the crotch. So this is one thing that you have to notice on where the location of your hip is at, because every woman in the world, regardless of what she's shaped like, her hips are always going to be below the crotch and never above it. Don't get confused by a lot of channels. A lot of people will tell you that female have varying places for where their hips at. That's not true. Every woman in this world has her hips below the crotch. If you find a female who has hips above her crotch, you have to understand that that female was born male, and someone played around with him and changed her or mutilated him into thinking that he's a female by giving him drugs or whatsoever. But every female, the location of the hip is below the crotch, because without that, a lot of the clothes that are sewn around the world and brought to so many different countries would not fit the females in it. If the females had varying degrees or varying places for their hips, it's always below the crotch. So as you can see right here, we're trying to measure the hip of a female. As you can see, the tape goes around the widest point, which is the hips in a female body, and it's below the crotch. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're a female who has wider shoulders than your hips, the location of your hip is below the crotch. It's not going to be above it. Okay, so that's one thing you have to take note. So this female can turn around, so from the back you can see exactly where the location of that hip is at from the back. As you can see, she turns around, and right there the location of the hip is just slightly above the bum line right there, but below the crotch. Slightly above the bum line, but but below the crotch. And I always suggest that if you have difficulties trying to ascertain where the location of a female, maybe you're trying to locate or identify the gender of someone and you have difficulties looking at the person from the front, try to see if you can find a picture of the person from the back. Because once you look at any gender from the back, you're going to know that that's male or female because of how acute the Q angle shows, especially from the back. So that's all I have for this. So you can know the location of where the female hip is at. If this was a man, this hip would be farther away from the bump line. So if you're doing an investigation into someone and you find out that the Q angle is very far away from the bump line, that's a man parading around and masquerading around as a woman. So let's get into the transvestigation of Richard Gere and wrap up this video real quick. Let's do that. As we've said before, if it's new, if you've never heard it before, it's the first video you're watching, the Vatican is responsible for your world. And it's run by the albino Vatican. That means the people who can trace their lineages back to Asia and to the generals and Genghis Khan as well. If you've watched this video up to this point, you should know that a lot of, you've probably heard this before, a lot of people from Asia, they said that they have genetic traits to Genghis Khan. But since we know that DNA is false, this is just based on the fact that they know the history. The albino supremacists in the Vatican know the history of this world, but they're trying to change it to their benefit because Genghis Khan brought about the idea of iconoplasm. That means rewriting history in your own image, as a lot of histories have been rewritten. Especially American histories, like the founding fathers are made to look and appear white when they're wearing white based on what we know. Like we said before, watch the Real Presidents playlist on this channel to get all that information. And a lot of histories has been changed because history is used to control your mind. All right, because remember, like we said before, history is not just anything. I mean, I've said this before, but not in this particular video. History is not just what you see in the official documents which say history. History is everything you see, read, or hear. All right, so history is being changed rapidly every day so that they can control their mind. Because one thing you have to understand, the reason for albino supremacy is because it's a terrorist concept to control the majority of the world's population, which happens to be black with woolly hair. We've talked about that before on a video. So you need to know your history. Write your history in books, because if you do not do so, someone else is going to write it for you. And that's what the white or the albino supremacists in the Vatican are doing all around the world. They are giving us their own history or false history to control us. So you have to write your own history. So especially, I've made a video before, we've made a video rather before dedicated to Africans. You have to know who these people are working for, the organizations that come in, and the albino elites which come in all the time trying to say they're trying to help you. They're most certainly not trying to help you. They're trying to limit the African population from being the greatest population in the world, based on what we've shown you through this whole entire video. So always remember that. So let's get back to Richard Gere right here. You can see that Richard Gere is actually a pretty woman, and that he was actually she was rather the pretty woman in the movie Pretty Woman, which a lot of people have watched and been deceived and thinking that they were looking at a virile, very handsome young male, when they were actually looking at a female. As you can see right here, Richard Gere has his Q angles below the crotch and is very, very acute. He's trying to put his hands on the male waist, but it doesn't exist because that's the female waist and the female pelvis. As you can see here that Richard Gere has a very curvaceous figure like a female should, because Richard Gere is 100% female and was the pretty woman in the Pretty Woman movie. Let's go to another picture of Richard Gere. As you can see right here, the Q angle starts to show and is below the crotch. Let me see if I can blow this picture up. As you can see right here, I don't know what's wrong with my mouse lately. It's been acting up. I'm sorry about that. But here what it is, you can see right there that Richard Gere's Q angle is below the crotch, very, very acute, because Richard Gere is 100% female. Fooled a lot of people for a very long time, including my poor mother. Just can't believe what she's going to say about this if I ever tell her. Here's Richard Gere again. As you can see, the Q angle is below the crotch because Richard Gere is 100% female and not a man in any way, shape, or form. Was the pretty woman in the Pretty Woman movie and not Julian Roberts like we were made to believe. And here is Richard Gere, clear as night and day. If we were to end this video right here, this should suffice. You can see it's clear as night and day. I blow this up. I don't know what's wrong with my mouse. Sorry about that, people. Here it is. cute Q angle below the crotch, because Richard Gere is 100% female. If we were to end this video right here, this should suffice. I want you to marinate on that picture for a while. That is the Q angle of a virile woman and not a man. So Richard Gere was the Pretty Woman in the Pretty Woman movie, and we thought that it was Julia Roberts that the movie was talking about. This is how things are used to control our history, because there's so much of the reason why we have a lot of mutilated people who call themselves transgenders in public sphere and places of influence in our world. When you get a book, you understand that it has to do more in worship of certain deities, which were always black deities all around the world. So when you get a book, you have that perfect understanding. Please get a book. Like I said before, if you've been ever looking for truth, I think this is what you need for it. All right, we stand by our word. You will have you will understand your word perfectly better after you get a book. Here is Richard Gere again. As you can see, a cute Q angle is below the crotch because Richard Gere is 100% female. As you can see, that very, very cute Q angle. Richard Gere was no man in any way, shape, or form. He's been lying for so long, and we thank God by the grace of Yehoshua that we can let you guys know this truth before he or she dies rather, and this truth has gone away. But today a lot of people will know the truth. And here's Richard Gere again. As you can see, he's walking like a female. How does a female walk? A female has a wide pubic arch, and because of that, the body needs to balance itself, the weight of the body while walking. So the legs of a female do two things. They move inwards and forwards because it's wider outside the body because of the pubic arch. So the legs need to come inwards and forward at the same time. So that's why a female always leans the weight of her body into the feet that's in front of her and walking in a catwalk kind of fashion. And that's what Richard Gere is doing there. As you can see, it's a cute Q angle is below the crotch because Richard Gere is 100% female. And judging from that chest as well, if you know anything about a woman's chest, it's always not in a symmetrical order like a man's chest, because the chest of a female rather is designed to carry mammary glands. It doesn't have a lot of muscles like that of a man because it's not made that way. And because of that, there is what we call an asymmetry in the chest region. As you can see right here, it still looks like it wants to have some sort of mammary glands, and it's not symmetrical like that of a man because Richard Gere is 100% female and not a man in any way, shape, or form. Here is Richard Gere again, as an arch in the back, and you can still see that same thing with the chest. We call it anomaly, the curse of the pecs, because a female is not designed to have pec muscles. Rather, her chest is designed to carry mammary glands and not muscles like that of a man. And Richard Gere has an arch in his back right here because Richard Gere is 100% female, not a man in any way, shape, or form. Richard Gere again, as you can see, that's the female arch in the back. I'm sorry about my mouse acting up all over the place, but you can see there is an arch in that back, and the pelvis is tilted forward like we showed you earlier in the video. Female always has a pelvis that's tilted forward so that she can carry pregnancy full term, and the baby can stay inside the pelvic region for the 9 months of conception. And this is what Richard Gere has here, an arch in the back. Alright, here's Gere again. As you can see, the cute Q angle is below the crotch, clear as night and day, because Richard Gere is 100% female, as you can tell right here. Cute Q angle below the crotch, because Richard Gere was not a man in any way, shape, or form, was the Pretty Woman in Pretty Woman. And once again, we see Richard Gere again here with a cute Q angle below the crotch, because she's 100% female. That's why Richard Gere always looked so pretty. And we used to always wonder, how can a man be that pretty? Because it was actually a woman and not a man in any way, shape, or form. And I want to thank a very special subscriber for bringing this to our attention. Amy, we haven't heard from you in a very long while. We hope you're okay wherever you are, but we thank you for making us to take a good look at Richard Gere right here and all the hard work you put in. We really, really do appreciate you. So keep doing what you're doing. All right, Richard Gere, another picture right here. As you can, I mean, if we should end the video right here and just go. It's because you can see right here that this is the cute Q angle below the crotch of a very virile female with female hips ready to give birth, because Richard Gere is 100% female. That's why he always looks so pretty. Was always a woman all the way. The Pretty Woman in the movie Pretty Woman. A lot of people's, childhood and histories are being manufactured because the Vatican controls them all. Don't worry about all the lies they tell you, like the governments of the world and everything else that's going on. All terrorism in this world is run by a government. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're in Africa, you're in Europe, you're in Asia, you're in Australia, you're in the United States of America. Everything about terrorism the schoolyard shootings that are going on, the hoaxes, the 9/11 was all controlled by your government, with the Vatican, which controls them all. Terrorism is used to control the population of the world because they can't do it, all right, organically. So that's why they use phony laws and terrorism to control the people. The terrorism is an act used by a minority to control a majority. In this case, the world at large, and in this case, the albino supremacists or white supremacists over the majority of the world's population, which is black with woolly hair. That's why they're in Africa. That's why AIDS is in Africa. That's why everything black or everything bad seems to come. Everything bad seems to happen and come from Africa. It's all to control the mindset of the people, so that it prevents people with pale skin and straight hair from breeding with people with black people with woolly hair, because the children will come out black, and the population, the already minority population of people with straight hair and albino skin gets the minority of people with straight hair and pale skin gets smaller, and the Vatican loses its hold and stranglehold on power because they cannot win over a majority of the population. That's the whole reason for white supremacy. And white supremacy is even practiced by blacks as well. A lot of people practice white supremacy. They judge people based on the texture of their hair first, before the character that they have, because that is what's been taught to you every day in and day out by history, which is everything you see, read, or hear. And that's just the way it works. But getting back to Richard Gere here, you can see that you've been looking at a female all along with a cute Q angle below the crotch, because Richard Gere is 100% female. An hourglass figure, been lying to us for many years that it's actually male when it's not. Okay, and here is we show you that picture, Richard Gere again. You can see there's an arch in that back right there, because Richard Gere is 100% female. As you can see how the pelvis of a female, which always starts high above the navel, shows here in Richard Gere, with the unsymmetrical chest muscles, because she's 100% female. Sorry if my speech is a little bit all over the place at this point, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Richard Gere again, cute Q angle below the crotch, because she's 100% female. I think we already showed you that picture. Is that the last picture right there? I think so. We already showed you this picture. So with that, we've come to the end of today's video. I hope you learned something to understand terrorism, understand the reason for white supremacy. It's all the people who can trace themselves back to Khan's general, who overtook Asia because of their hate for the caste system, the ancient caste system, and then them trying to rule the world as Genghis Khan told them to. And everybody around the world that has straight hair and pale skin has their origin in Asia, because it was only Asia that was practicing or do have a culture of inbreeding that brings about albinism. And from then they spread it around the world from everywhere they go. They can't do it in Africa as much as they can, because the African population is the greatest and the largest in the world. And it's difficult. African terrain is difficult because of the languages and the number of people. So Genghis Khan couldn't do anything about getting to Africa. They would lose, because a war with Africans and making Africans or black people in general realize, right, that they're the majority, that's going to unite the whole black population in the world, and they are going to lose that particular war because they cannot win it. So that's why they do everything covertly and subversion to make black people, woolly-haired people across the world, to believe that they are the minority population when they are the majority population. They use every available means to do that, even through the movie Black Panther. We hope that this channel is still around, because we're going to have a whole series on Black Panther. We already started it as part 1. We have a lot to tell you about that movie that you guys did not know. So with that, we've come to the end of today's video. Please subscribe to our second channel called Tricks of the S Trade 2 in case this one goes down. And get our book. We're not just trying to sell you a book. We're trying to get real history and understanding into your hands, which you guys have never known for a long, long time. And by the grace of Yehoshua, we have this available. So please get our book, Understand Your World, Understand Reality. Okay? There's going to be a banner on the screen to show you how to get in contact with us. And with that, we leave you with these words. Always look with your eyes, but you have to see with your brain. Think about what you're seeing. Think about what you're hearing. Think about what you're reading. Because without that, you're still going to be blind. Look with your eyes, but see with your brain. Thanks. I'll talk with you guys later.